Hey, Fort Smith, welcome to Give Me 5 minutes with Fort Smith City Director Neil Martin, where we talk about the events that happened last week and we look ahead to what's going on this week. Let's go ahead and jump in and talk about last week. On November 12th, we had a study session. Number of things that were talked about, very important things. We talked about our meetings for 2025. We got those scheduled out, or we'll be voting on that this week to the actual dates that we're going to be meeting. We also talked about citywide meter replacement and upgrade to advanced meter infrastructure, AMI. So this would be replacing all of our water meters. A lot of discussion around that. It's very expensive to do, but the board authorized a study, about $34,000, to look to see if replacing all of our meters would be beneficial for us in recovering our water loss. We have a significant amount of water loss. Last year, I think in 23, it was about 35%. So this would be looking to see if it would be worthwhile for us to go to these new meters across the board. A lot of discussion happened associated with that. I encourage you to go watch that. We also talked about irrigation rates and high tier water users. There was a lot of discussion. If you ever want to know about how water is calculated, how costs are allocated and calculated for water, I encourage you to watch the meeting last Tuesday. But ultimately, what came out of that is probably about a 22% decrease on some of the high water users and the irrigation users. And we'll be voting on that this Tuesday. But if you want to know about water rates, how everything's calculated, how folks outside the city that we sell water to, inside the city, if you want to learn about all that, I encourage you to go to fortsmithar.gov/watch. And there you can go to that specific agenda item and you can hear all of that discussion. There's a lot to it. It is very complicated in terms of calculating water rates. And it was a very interesting and enlightening, eye-opening discussion. We also talked about the impact of a court case, a Supreme Court case, Grants Pass, Oregon versus Johnson. And ultimately what I think is coming out of that are tighter, tougher ordinances that will be hoping it will be helping to reduce our homeless population in the downtown area and around the city. So that court case allowed cities to be able to enforce laws that they've got on the books. And I think we're going to see some much tougher laws coming over the next couple of weeks. But again, I encourage you to go to fortsmithar.gov/watch. You can see all of that discussion. You can see everything that was talked about, all the questions that were asked, the answers that came from that. It was very, very informative. Now, this Tuesday, we have a regular meeting, a voting meeting. We're going to be voting on a number of different things. I'm only going to hit a few of those items, but I encourage you to go look at the agenda and you can see everything that we'll be talking about. Again, we'll be voting on lowering that rate for those higher tiered users. We have a number of items related to grants from the federal government in various different things. So I know there'll be a number of discussions about that. We also have a contract for a consent decree project. And if you remember, a couple weeks ago, we had a agreement with a vendor or with a company to do a project for us. And they tried to get out of it. There was a problem with getting surety for that company. We ended up not going with that company. They wanted out. We went ahead and let them get out of that contract. Their bid was significantly less than every other bids. It caused a lot of questions, a lot of concerns. So we are going to be revoting on that particular contract. It's about $8.2 million, a consent decree project, a pretty significant consent decree project. So we'll be voting on that. And finally, we'll be voting to purchase new playground equipment for smaller neighborhood parks, Hillcrest Park and Woodlawn Park. It's about $522,000. And that funding comes out of the 1/8 cent sales tax that was passed by the voters a couple years ago. So a lot of things going on. I encourage you to look at the agenda, look at all the information on the agenda, because that was just a small piece of it. We also have next Friday on November 22nd, we have budget meetings where we will be looking at the 2025 budget. This is the summary budget that we got, and it's available online. If you go to fortsmithar.gov, you look at the finance section, you can take a look at this and see what the proposed budget is for 2025. I've been studying that over the last week, this weekend, a lot to go over, and we'll be having an all-day discussion on Friday as a result of that. That's it for this week's Give Me Five. I hope the information was informative. It's a lot of information. I hope it made you better aware of the items that are in front of your board of directors. Everyone have a great week. We'll see you on Tuesday. We might see you on Friday. But at any rate, we'll definitely see you next Sunday on Give Me Five.